There are places in Appalachia where people simply disappear. No trace, no explanation, just gone. And the ones who return? They refuse to speak about what they saw. The Appalachian Mountains hold more than just ancient trees and winding trails. They hide secrets darker than the night itself. Tonight, we bring you 5 horrifying true stories from the depths of Appalachia. They will make you question what truly lurks beyond the tree line. But be warned, once you hear these stories, you may never look at the mountains the same way again. Turn off the lights, listen closely, and whatever you do, don't wander too far off the path. Stay with us till the end. Subscribe us for more terrifying true stories you won't soon forget. Also tell me, where are you from listening these stories? Let's begin. I never believed in the stories about the old railway tunnel until my brother disappeared inside. He was always the reckless one, the kind of person who laughed in the face of warnings and dared the dark to swallow him whole. The locals said the tunnel was alive, a passageway between this world and something older, something that should have been left forgotten. But my brother did not care about legends. He went in, and he never came out. The authorities searched for days, but the deeper they went, the stranger things became. Their voices did not echo properly. Their lights flickered in unnatural ways, and at some point, they claimed the tunnel went on forever, stretching beyond the limits of reality. Then they gave up. They told me he was gone, another foolish hiker lost to the mountain, but I refused to accept it. He was my brother, and I knew he was still in there. I gathered a search party, a few close friends who owed me enough favors to risk something they could not understand. Armed with flashlights, ropes, and enough supplies for days, we stood before the gaping mouth of the tunnel. It was wider than I remembered, like it had grown since the last time I stood before it. The air that drifted out smelled rotten, like damp earth, and something deeper, something decaying. The moment we stepped inside, the temperature dropped. The beams of our flashlights cut through the dark, but the further we went, the more it felt like the light was being swallowed, as if the tunnel itself was absorbing it. At first, it was just a feeling, a gnawing unease in the pit of my stomach. Then, as we walked, I noticed the ground beneath us did not sound right. Our footsteps were too soft, like we were stepping on something that was not quite solid rock. I did not say anything. I did not want to be the one to admit something was wrong, but I knew they felt it too. Then the shadows started shifting. At first, I thought it was just tricks of the light, the way our beams bounced off the old, damp walls. But they moved wrong. The shadows stretched in ways that did not match our bodies. When we stopped walking, the shadows did not stop moving. And then, we saw the figures. They stood further down the tunnel, just outside the reach of our lights, unmoving, silent. They did not respond when we called out, did not react when we shined the beams on them. Their eyes were black pits, their faces empty of anything human. But I knew those faces. They were people who had gone missing years ago, faces from old newspaper clippings and town whispers. And they were watching us. One of my friends, Mark, stepped forward, his voice shaking as he called out to them. They did not answer. They did not blink. Then one of them took a step toward us, slow, deliberate. The moment its foot hit the ground, the tunnel shuddered. The walls around us groaned, the air growing thick, with something that felt like a breath. Then we heard the sound, a deep, wet inhale, like the tunnel itself was breathing. And suddenly, I understood. The tunnel was alive, and it was waking up. Panic set in. Mark turned to run, but the moment he did, something shot out from the darkness. It moved too fast for me to see, a blur of shifting black that wrapped around his legs and yanked him off his feet. He screamed, clawing at the ground, but it was useless. The darkness swallowed him whole, and just like that, he was gone. The others froze, their breathing ragged, their eyes wide with horror. I knew we had to move. I knew we had to get out before it took us too, but when I turned back toward the entrance, my heart nearly stopped. The tunnel had changed. The walls had shifted, the path behind us stretching further than it should have, like the tunnel had grown while we were inside. The entrance was gone. There was nothing but endless dark in every direction. Then, from deep within the tunnel, something crawled toward us. It was slow at first, the sound of dragging limbs against the stone, the wet slither of something pulling itself forward. My flashlight flickered, and for a brief second, I saw it. It had no real shape, no solid form. It was shifting, changing, twisting itself into different faces, different bodies. It was wearing them, the ones it had already taken. And at the very front of that shifting mass, I saw my brother. His face was hollow, his mouth stretched in a silent scream, his eyes locked onto mine. But it was not him. It was just wearing him, and it was coming for me. I wanted to run, but my legs would not move. My breath came in ragged gasps as the thing wearing my brother's face kept coming, its body shifting with each step, dragging itself toward us with a grotesque, slithering motion. The others were frozen too, trapped between fear and the sickening realization that we were not leaving this tunnel the same way we came in. Then, the walls around us began to pulse. At first, I thought it was my eyes playing tricks on me, but then I heard the low, wet sound of something shifting beneath the surface. The stone was not stone at all. It was flesh. It was alive, and it was waking up. The figures we had seen before the lost ones began moving again. They did not walk like people should. Their limbs bent the wrong way. Their mouths hung open too wide. Their eyes still black, empty holes. One of them reached for me, fingers curling unnaturally, and I stumbled backward, colliding with the wall. It felt wrong, too warm, too soft, and it shuddered beneath my weight, like a living thing. I recoiled, my stomach twisting, but I had no time to process it. The tunnel was closing in on us. A scream tore through the airone of my friends. I think it was David. He had backed too close to one of the figures, and before any of us could react, it lunged. Its mouth stretched open, too wide for any human, its face distorting like melting wax. Then it clamped down on his shoulder, its black eyes locked onto mine. As it sank its teeth into his flesh, he shrieked, thrashing, but it was no use. The darkness swallowed him whole, just like Mark. We were next. I grabbed Lisa's wrist and ran, forcing my legs to move, even though every part of me screamed to stop. The tunnel twisted ahead of us, shifting as we moved, stretching longer, bending in ways that made no sense. My flashlight flickered again, and for a split second, I saw them, the faces inside the walls. Their mouths were moving, whispering, screaming, their eyes rolling in panic as they pounded from the inside, trapped, pleading. And then I saw him, my brother. He was in the wall, his hands pressed against the surface, his mouth open in a silent cry. Our eyes met, and in that moment, I knew he was still in there, still alive, still suffering. But if we did not get out now, we would suffer with him. Lisa yanked me forward, her grip the only thing keeping me from stopping. We sprinted through the shifting dark, the walls growing tighter, the air turning thick like it was pressing in on us. The sound of wet, dragging limbs was all around us now, crawling from every direction, the whispers turning to guttural, hungry breaths. Then, suddenly, a light, a small, distant glow, barely visible through the darkness. I did not know if it was real. I did not care. We ran toward it, our feet pounding against the pulsing ground, shadows clawing at our heels. The tunnel roared around us, shaking, groaning, the very walls tearing apart. The thing behind us let out a shriek, a sound so deep and inhuman that it sent a spike of pure terror through my chest. We burst forward, diving into the glow, and then silence. Cold air hit my skin like a slap, and I realized I was on my hands and knees, heaving for breath. The tunnel was behind us, but something was wrong. It was smaller now, just a narrow, crumbling hole in the mountainside, as if it had never been large enough for us to enter in the first place. Lisa was next to me, shaking, her eyes wide with something I could not name. We had made it out, but when I turned back to the tunnel, my stomach twisted. The light from my flashlight still flickered at the entrance, and for just a moment, I saw them, the figures, my brother, watching us. And as the tunnel let out one final, deep breath, the entrance sealed itself shut, swallowing them forever. The others were gone. Mark, David, all of them. The town never found their bodies. No one believed our story, but Lisa and I knew the truth. The tunnel was alive, and it was still waiting for the next fool to step inside. There are some places in this world where the trees grow too tall and the silence feels heavier than it should. Places where the shadows seem to stretch longer than they ought to, and the air carries something unspoken, something ancient. Blackthorn Ridge was one of those places. It was supposed to be our getaway, a place where my wife and I could disconnect from the chaos of the world and find some peace. The cabin was old, tucked deep into the forest, miles away from the nearest town. The real estate agent had called it charming, rustic, full of history. It had been sitting empty for years, but it was in surprisingly good condition, almost as if it had been waiting for someone to move in. The first few nights were peaceful. The woods whispered outside, the wind stirring the leaves, the occasional crack of a branch breaking under the weight of some unseen creature. It was what you would expect from a place like this. But on the fourth night, something changed. I woke up to a sound so faint I almost thought I had imagined it. A soft tapping at the front door. 3 slow knocks. I glanced at my wife, but she was still asleep, her breath steady and undisturbed. I sat up, listening. Maybe it was a tree branch swaying in the wind, maybe some animal brushing against the porch. I told myself it was nothing, but something in my gut twisted uncomfortably. The next morning, I checked the front step. There was nothing there. No footprints in the dirt. No signs that anyone or anything had been near the cabin. I shook it off. A trick of the wind, I told myself. That night, the knocking came again. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. This time, my wife heard it too. She sat up, clutching the blanket, her eyes wide. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand and crept to the window. The porch was empty, but just beyond the trees, in the dim moonlight, I saw them. Small figures standing motionless among the trunks. My breath caught in my throat. They were children. At least, they looked like children. 5 or 6 of them, all standing in a row, their faces barely visible in the darkness. I opened my mouth to say something, to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. Then one of them stepped forward, just enough for the light to catch their face. Their eyes were wrong, hollow and black, like deep, empty pits. No reflection, no glimmer of life, just darkness. My stomach turned, and I stumbled back from the window. My wife whispered my name, her voice shaking. I told her what I saw, but she did not need to hear it. She had already looked for herself. We did not sleep that night. The children did not move, did not speak, did not blink. They only stood there, watching. When the sun finally rose, they were gone. But something told me they had not gone far. The next day, we tried to make sense of it. Maybe we had imagined it. Maybe it was some weird trick of the light, a group of kids playing a cruel joke. But the unease settled deep into my bones, and I could not shake it. That night, they came again. The knocking was louder this time, more insistent. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I gritted my teeth and grabbed the flashlight again. I had to see. I had to know. I stepped onto the porch, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The air was deathly still. The trees loomed tall, their branches shifting slightly in the breeze. And then I saw them, standing just at the edge of the tree line, closer than before. My grip on the flashlight tightened. "Who are you?" My voice came out hoarse, shaking. The children did not answer. They only stared. My wife called my name from inside the cabin, but I could not move, could not look away. One of them tilted their head slightly, almost like a curious animal. Then they all did the same, perfectly synchronized. My breath came fast and shallow. I felt something behind me, a chill creeping up my spine. I turned, expecting to see my wife standing in the doorway. But the door was closed, and behind me, just inches away, I heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks from inside the house. I spun around so fast that the flashlight slipped from my grip, tumbling to the porch floor with a dull clatter. The knocking had come from inside. The realization sent a cold shiver through me, my pulse hammering in my ears. My wife's voice trembled as she called my name again, this time from behind the door. My hands fumbled against the wood as I pushed inside, slamming it shut and throwing the lock without hesitation. My wife stood frozen in the middle of the room, her face pale as death. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded, unable to form words. The knocking came again, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. But this time, they came from inside the walls. My breath hitched. I grabbed my wife's hand, gripping so tightly I could feel her trembling. The sound moved, shifting through the cabin like something crawling just beneath the surface. Knock, knock, knock. The walls seemed to pulse with it, the wood groaning as if under some unseen pressure. My mind raced for an explanation, but nothing made sense. My wife yanked my arm, her voice barely more than a breath. "The children." I turned to the window. They were closer now, standing just beyond the porch, their black eyes locked onto us. But something was different. They were smiling, their lips stretched too wide, too unnatural. My stomach lurched at the sight, and then I noticed something else. Their mouths were moving. No sound came from them, no whispers, no breath, just the silent motion of their lips shaping words I could not hear. The knocking grew louder, faster, more urgent. It came from the floor now, from the ceiling, from every corner of the cabin. My wife whimpered, clamping her hands over her ears. "We have to go," I managed to choke out. "Now." I grabbed our car keys from the counter, but when I reached for the door, my hand froze on the handle. The door was ice cold, a deep, bone-chilling cold that burned my skin like frostbite. The knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. My wife was crying now, silent tears streaking down her face. I could feel it too, the weight of something pressing in, the air growing thick, suffocating. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the knocking returned. But this time, it was not from the walls. It was from the inside of the bedroom. My wife let out a choked sob as I took a hesitant step forward. The door creaked open an inch, just enough for darkness to spill out like ink. My hands shook as I raised the flashlight, but the beam barely cut through the blackness. And then, a hand, small, pale, reaching out from the gap. The fingers twitched, curling slightly, as if beckoning. My entire body screamed to run, but my feet refused to move. My wife yanked my arm hard enough to snap me out of it, and I staggered backward. The door slammed shut on its own. The children outside began to move, stepping closer in unison. The silence shattered as the whispers finally came. They were inside the cabin, surrounding us. Their voices were soft, distant, yet right next to my ear. "Leave," they murmured. "Leave, before it wakes up." My wife grabbed the car keys from my frozen hands and bolted for the back door. I did not hesitate. We ran. We did not look back. The trees blurred past us as we reached the car, fumbling with the doors, hands shaking too hard to unlock them on the first try. And then, as we finally got inside and the engine roared to life, I made the mistake of looking at the cabin one last time. The children were gone, the door stood open, and in the doorway, something else stood watching us. Something taller, something wrong. I slammed my foot onto the gas and we tore down the dirt road, the cabin shrinking behind us. The knocking never stopped. Even as we left Blackthorn Ridge behind, even as we reached the safety of town, even now as I sit in this motel room writing this, it has not stopped. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. No matter where we go, it finds us, and I do not think we can run forever. I should have listened to the warnings. I should have taken the old man seriously when he said that the valley was cursed, that no one who walked too deep into its fog ever returned the same. It sounded like one of those backwoods superstitions, the kind of tale that locals spread to keep outsiders away. But we were young, cocky, and desperate for something thrilling. So when we packed our bags and hiked toward the forgotten valley, we laughed at the warnings, at the cryptic stories about the creature they called the Whistler. We thought it was just another legend meant to spook tourists. The valley was beautiful, untouched by time, filled with towering trees and thick mist that made everything feel dreamlike. But it was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves, just the sound of our own footsteps crunching against the damp ground. That was the first thing that felt off. Nature is never silent. We set up camp near a stream, the fog rolling in heavier as the sun dipped behind the hills. The fire crackled, and we passed around a bottle, telling ghost stories and daring each other to go deeper into the woods. That was when we heard it for the first time. A whistle, low and distant, carried by the wind like a sad, wandering tune. It was slow, deliberate, not random like a bird call, or the sound of wind squeezing through branches. We stopped talking, listening to the eerie melody as it circled us. Probably some hunter, Jake muttered, but his voice lacked confidence. The whistle came again, this time from the opposite direction. It felt impossible, like it had traveled across the valley in seconds. We joked about it, tried to shake off the unease, but no one could ignore how wrong it sounded. The laughter died down, and the fire suddenly felt like the only thing keeping the dark at bay. We decided to turn in, brushing off the whistle as some trick of the wind, but I could see it in everyone's eyes. No one truly believed that. Lying in my tent, I heard it again, closer this time. The same slow tune, dragging each note like a breath that should have run out long ago. It was right outside the tent. My breath hitched, my fingers digging into the sleeping bag as I strained to listen. The fabric of the tent barely moved. No shadow passed by, but the whistle lingered, soft and patient. I held my breath, counting the seconds, waiting for it to move away. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I wanted to believe it was gone, that it was all in my head, but then I heard the soft crunch of footsteps circling the camp, one slow step at a time. Morning came with a strange stillness. No one spoke about what they had heard, but I could see it in their faces. Dark circles under their eyes, the way their hands trembled slightly as they packed up. No one wanted to admit that something felt horribly wrong. We decided to cut the trip short, pack up and leave before noon. But as we started walking, we realized we had been moving in circles. The trees all looked the same. The path never changed, no matter how far we went. The compass spun uselessly in Jake's hand. We should have been back at the road hours ago. The fog thickened, wrapping around us like a living thing, swallowing the path behind us. That was when Tyler went missing. 1 second he was there, right behind us, and the next, he was gone. No sound, no cry for help, just gone. We called his name, searched every inch of the trail, but there was nothing. only that damn whistle growing closer, weaving through the trees like it was taunting us. Panic set in. We started running, but no matter where we turned, we always ended up back at the same stream where we had camped. That was when we saw the footprints. Dozens of them, circling our sight, all leading from different directions, all ending right where we stood. They were deep, heavy, like someone had been walking in endless loops around us. And then, the worst part, they weren't ours. The footprints didn't match our boots. The shapes were wrong. Some too large, others too small. Like they had been made by something that only mimicked the way humans walked. We weren't alone in the valley. Something was watching, waiting. The whistle came again, right behind us, closer than ever before. We ran. It was instinct, pure animal terror pushing us forward. But no matter how fast we moved, the whistle followed, weaving through the trees. Never too far, never too close. Just there. I could feel it in my bones, the sound drilling into my skull like a needle. My breath burned in my chest, my legs ached, but stopping meant facing whatever was behind us. Then Jake tripped. He hit the ground hard, a sharp cry escaping his lips as his ankle twisted beneath him. I turned, reaching for him, but his eyes went wide, staring past me. I did not want to look. Every instinct screamed at me to keep my eyes forward, but I had to know. Slowly, I turned my head. The fog parted just enough to show me the shape. It was tall, too tall, with limbs that seemed to stretch and contract with every movement. Its skin was wrong, shifting in the dim light like wet, pulsing flesh. And then, it opened its mouth. No teeth, no tongue, just a gaping void that stretched impossibly wide. The whistle came from inside it, from the hollow nothingness where a throat should have been. I grabbed Jake and pulled him up, half carrying, half dragging him as we stumbled through the trees. Tyler was gone, but I refused to let Jake vanish too. Somehow, we found the cave, a gaping black maw carved into the hillside, jagged rocks framing the entrance like broken teeth. I did not care where it led, only that it was away from the thing in the fog. We stumbled inside, the air damp and heavy, the darkness absolute. The whistle did not follow. For the first time since the night before, silence settled around us. My breath echoed off the walls, shaky, uneven. I fumbled for my phone, the weak glow of the screen revealing a narrow tunnel stretching deep into the earth. Then we saw them. Hundreds of tiny, sharpened teeth embedded into the stone, arranged in twisted patterns, spirals, and crude, grinning mouths. Some were fresh, gleaming with moisture, others old and brittle, crumbling to dust when I brushed my fingers over them. My stomach turned. Who had put them here? Or worse, what had left them behind? Jake whimpered beside me, his eyes darting around the cave, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. He was losing it, and I could not blame him. We needed to keep moving, find another way out. But the deeper we went, the worse it got. The walls pulsed, like something was breathing beneath the stone. The ground felt softer, sinking slightly under our weight. The air was thick with the scent of rot. And then, the whistle came again, not from outside. Not from behind us, from within the cave. My grip tightened around Jake's wrist, my pulse hammering against my ribs. It was here. It had always been here. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber, and in the dim glow of my phone, I saw them. Faces, not carved, not drawn, but real. Human faces stretched tight against the walls, mouths open in silent screams. Eyes wide and unblinking, skin fused with stone, their features twisted in agony, as if they had been swallowed by the cave itself. I could not breathe. The whistle grew louder, reverberating through the chamber, vibrating in my skull. Jake collapsed, hands over his ears, screaming. I tried to pull him up, tried to make him move, but something shifted in the darkness. a long, spindly arm stretching from the shadows, fingers curling around Jake's ankle. He looked at me, his face a mask of terror, and then he was gone, yanked into the blackness, his scream cut off so suddenly that it left a ringing silence in its wake. I ran. I did not think, did not stop, just ran, the whistle chasing me, wrapping around me like a living thing. Somehow, I made it out. The sun was rising, the fog thinning, but the valley was silent, too silent. No birds, no wind, just emptiness. I did not look back. I did not stop until I reached the main road, my body shaking, my mind refusing to process what had happened. No one believed me. They searched the valley, found our campsite, our scattered gear, but no sign of Jake or Tyler. No cave, no twisted faces, nothing. Just an empty forest, quiet and undisturbed. They called it a tragic accident, said they must have gotten lost, but I know the truth. I hear it sometimes, late at night, just beyond my window. That slow, patient whistle, it is still out there, and it is waiting. They say some places were never meant to be found again. Some places hold on to what was done in the dark, whispering to those foolish enough to listen. I did not believe in stories like that, not until we stepped foot in that town. It did not even have a name on the map, just a winding road that seemed to stretch forever through the thick Appalachian forest. We were 5 in total, a team of paranormal investigators who prided ourselves on seeking out the abandoned and the forgotten. But this place felt different from the moment we arrived. The trees grew too close, their twisted limbs reaching overhead like skeletal fingers, blocking out most of the sky. The air felt thick, heavy, like the weight of something unseen pressed down on us. We followed an old dirt path, led by stories of a church made of bones, a place where an entire congregation had vanished over a century ago. At first, we laughed about it, trying to shake the unease creeping into our bones, but the laughter faded the moment we saw it. Standing at the end of the trail, hidden between the trees, was the church. The stories had not been exaggerations. The structure was real, and it was made entirely of bones. Skulls were stacked to form the walls, femurs and ribs arranged like grotesque archways, and at the very top, a crude cross fashioned from what looked like 2 fused spines. I felt my stomach twist at the sight of it, but none of us spoke. There was something wrong with the silence here. No wind, no birds, not even the sound of our own breathing seemed loud enough to fill the emptiness. It was as if the world outside had disappeared, leaving only this cursed place behind. We hesitated before stepping inside, but curiosity overpowered fear, as it always did. The wooden floor groaned beneath our weight, the sound unsettlingly like a human voice in pain. The pews were lined with more bones, each arranged with unnatural precision. At the far end of the room stood the pulpit, a towering mass of skulls, with an open book resting on top. Dust coated its pages, but the words were still legible. The name Reverend Elias Crow was written in an elegant, almost delicate script at the top of the page. We had heard the legend before. A pastor who had led his congregation deep into the mountains, promising them salvation. Instead, they were never seen again. No one knew what had happened, but the stories spoke of sacrifices, of an unholy deal made with something that should have never been spoken to. It was just a legend, we had told ourselves. But then the whispering started. At first, it was barely noticeable, a soft hum beneath the weight of silence. I thought it was my imagination, until I saw the others react too. It came from the walls, from the ceiling, from beneath our feet. Words we could not understand, but the tone was unmistakable. They were pleading, crying, begging. I felt the hair on my arms rise as I turned to leave, but the door was gone. Where it had stood just moments ago was now only a wall of bones, shifting, moving, twisting into place, as if they had always been there. The others started to panic, voices rising in fear, but I could not move. My gaze was locked on the pulpit, where the book now lay open to a different page. A passage had been written in red, the ink glistening, as if still wet. "Speak his name and awaken the forgotten." The whispers grew louder. The walls trembled. I did not want to say it. I did not want to give this place any more power than it already had. But someone did. I do not know who among us whispered it first, but the moment that name left their lips, the bones came alive. The first scream was cut short. It was Lucas. His body convulsed as something unseen yanked him backward, his arms thrashing as he disappeared into the wall of bones. We reached for him, but it was as if the church had swallowed him whole. The bones shifted, sealing the gap where he had been, leaving nothing but silence in his place. Panic surged through us like wildfire. Claire sobbed, her hands covering her mouth, while Ethan pounded against the walls, screaming Lucas's name. No response. The whispers grew into a chorus, each voice layering over the next, weaving into something too loud, too close, too real. The walls were not just shifting anymore. They were pulsing, expanding, contracting, breathing. The church was alive, and we were inside it. A deep, guttural laugh rolled through the room, low and resonant, vibrating through my bones. Reverend Elias Crow. The name filled my mind, pressing against the inside of my skull like a hand forcing itself into my thoughts. I clutched my head, trying to block it out, but the sound only grew louder. Claire screamed again, pointing toward the pulpit. The book was gone. In its place stood a figure, tall, gaunt, his skin stretched thin over sharp bones. His eyes were nothing but pits of darkness, swirling with something moving just beneath the surface. His mouth curved into a smile that did not belong to something human. He did not speak, but we understood. We had called him, and now he was here. The pews erupted into motion. Bones snapped together like puzzle pieces, forming grotesque figures that jerked and twitched as if remembering how to move. Skeletons, malformed and incomplete, pulled themselves upright, empty sockets fixed on us. The floor beneath us buckled, tilting, as if the entire church was sinking into something unseen. Ethan grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the altar, his voice barely audible over the deafening whispers. We had to find a way out, but there was no door, no windows, only the pulpit, the towering figure of Elias Crow, and the relentless walls of shifting bone. The air grew thick with the stench of decay, the scent of old death clinging to our lungs. My vision blurred, nausea twisting my stomach. The church was feeding off us, draining something we could not see, pulling us into its grasp, one breath at a time. A movement from the corner of my eye. Claire was on her knees, her body shuddering. She was whispering something under her breath, over and over, her hands pressed to her ears. I stepped toward her, but Ethan pulled me back, his grip iron tight. It was not prayer she was muttering. It was a name, his name. Crow's eyes locked onto her, and the moment her lips shaped the last syllable, she was gone. Not pulled, not taken. She simply vanished, as if she had never been there at all. Only her voice remained, tangled in the whispers, repeating the name, a warning or a curse. The skeletons lunged forward, their movements jerky but determined. We ran, dodging between them, the floor shifting beneath us like a living thing. The walls stretched higher, pressing inward, closing the space between us. We would be next. We would be part of this place, just like the others before us. And then I saw it. The only thing in this wretched, God-forsaken church that was not made of bone. A rusted iron candle holder near the pulpit, its base buried in the wooden floor. Something deep inside told me it was wrong, out of place, and that was exactly why it mattered. Ethan saw it too. Without hesitation, he lunged for it, gripping the rusted metal and yanking with all his strength. The moment it tore free, the church convulsed, a guttural scream ripping through the air. The bones shattered, collapsing in on themselves, the figures crumbling to dust. The whispers turned to shrieks, then silence. A blinding white light swallowed everything, and then darkness. When I woke up, I was lying on the dirt road at the edge of the forest, the others beside me, but there was no church, no ruins, only empty space where it had stood. I turned to Ethan, but his face was pale, his hands trembling. Claire and Lucas were gone. The ground beneath us was untouched, as if nothing had ever been there. But I know the truth. We called something, and though we escaped, not all of us did. And some part of me wonders if that place is still out there, waiting for the next fools to find it, waiting for another name to be spoken. There is an old saying my granddad used to tell me when I was a kid. He would sit on the porch, rocking slow in that creaky wooden chair, spitting tobacco into a rusty can. "Some things in these mountains were never meant to be touched, boy," he would say. "The land remembers more than people ever will." I never understood what he meant until that summer when I worked on the highway crew, cutting through a stretch of untouched forest deep in the Appalachians. It was good money, and the work was hard, but simple. At least that is what I thought. The first week went by without anything unusual, just the sound of chainsaws ripping through trees, the steady clang of axes, the hum of heavy machinery pushing dirt into place. But then, the whispers started. At first, I thought it was just the wind, that eerie, breathy sound of the trees shifting against each other. But some of the guys started hearing it too. Low voices, speaking in a language none of us recognized, drifting through the forest when the sun started setting. The foreman told us it was nothing, just the natural sounds of the woods. We had a job to do, and there was no time for ghost stories. So we ignored it, just like we ignored the feeling that something was watching us from beyond the tree line. The first time I saw them, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. We were packing up for the day when I noticed movement deep in the trees. At first, they looked like people, but their bodies were all wrong, bent at sharp angles, like they had too many joints in the wrong places. I blinked, and they were gone. I told myself it was just shadows, a trick of the light. But then Dave, one of the older crew members, pulled me aside that night. "You saw them too, didn't you?" he said. I didn't know what to say, but I didn't have to. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he lit a cigarette. "I have been working these mountains for 20 years. I have seen strange things, but nothing like this. We need to finish this job fast and get the hell out of here." I wanted to believe he was just spooked, but the next morning, one of our guys, Ricky, was gone. We searched the whole site, calling his name, checking the tents, the trucks, even the cleared out patches of land where we had already cut through the trees. Nothing. No sign of struggle, no tracks leading away, just his hard hat placed neatly on top of a tree stump right at the edge of the forest. Next to it was a piece of paper. At first, I thought someone was messing with us, but when I picked it up, my stomach turned ice cold. The note was written in Ricky's handwriting. "Do not fix what ain't broken. The crooked folk do not like it." That was when I realized something was very, very wrong. Ricky would not have just left, and if he had written that note, he had been afraid. We went to the foreman, showed him the note, told him something was out there. He just laughed, said it was probably Ricky pulling some dumb prank. Or worse, he got drunk and wandered off. He told us to get back to work, so we did. What else could we do? But every single one of us knew something was wrong. The forest felt different now. The air was too still, too heavy. It smelled strange, like damp earth, and something sour underneath it. And then, the trees started moving. At first, we thought it was just our nerves, but the longer we worked, the more we noticed. The paths we cleared seemed to shift overnight. A tree that had been cut down the day before would be standing again the next morning, its bark smooth and unmarked. The tire tracks from our trucks would be gone, like we had never been there at all. Dave refused to go out alone anymore, said he swore he saw something standing outside his tent in the middle of the night, watching him. He didn't describe what it looked like, and none of us asked. We already knew. It was the third night when everything finally snapped. We were in our tents, pretending to sleep, when we heard it. A sound that was wrong in every possible way. It started as a whisper, that same strange language, but then it grew louder, stretching and twisting into something else. A voice that should not have existed, low and rattling like wind through dead leaves, but filled with something worse than malice. Dave was the first to run, bursting out of his tent with his flashlight, his face pale as death. The rest of us followed, and that was when we saw them. They were standing at the edge of the tree line, a dozen or more, their bodies shifting in the dark, heads tilting at unnatural angles, their arms too long, their fingers too thin. Their eyes, if they had any, were nothing but hollow pits of blackness, and they were whispering. The sound scraped against my skull like rusted nails. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. The crooked folk do not like it. Ricky had tried to warn us. Then, without a sound, the figures began to move. They moved like broken puppets, their limbs twisting in ways that should not have been possible, their heads lolling from side to side, as if their necks had been snapped long ago. The whispering did not stop, but it was inside my head now, crawling behind my eyes like insects skittering beneath my skin. The words meant nothing, but I understood them all the same. A warning, a command, a curse. My legs locked in place, my breath caught in my throat, as I felt the weight of something watching, something much older than the trees, something buried deep within the roots of this land, long before men ever set foot here. Dave was the first to break, his flashlight slipping from his shaking fingers as he turned and bolted toward the trucks. The moment his feet hit the dirt, the whispers stopped. The crooked folk tilted their heads in unison, their black pits of eyes tracking his movement. He did not even make it 10 steps before something unseen yanked him backward with a sickening crack. His scream cut short in an instant. When we turned to look, there was nothing left of him. No body, no blood, just his boot, standing upright in the dirt like he had melted right out of it. Panic hit us like a wave. Someone shoved me, someone else yelled to run, and I did. We all did. But the trees were not where they were supposed to be. The path we had cleared that morning was gone, swallowed up by thick, gnarled trunks and tangled roots that seemed to pulse like living veins. The trucks were still there, but the road was not. Just an endless stretch of trees that should not have been there, twisting and shifting as if they were alive. I could hear the others shouting, but their voices sounded distant, stretched, as if the forest was swallowing the sound before it could reach my ears. One of the guys, Kenny, tried to climb into the truck. He yanked the door open, but the inside was filled with dirt, packed tight as if the vehicle had been buried underground for 100 years and we had just dug it up. His scream barely had time to leave his throat before the door slammed shut on its own. When we pried it open again, he was gone. No sign of him, no footprints leading away, just that same awful whisper curling through the air like smoke. I do not know how long we ran. The trees never ended. The night stretched on, longer than it should have, as if time itself had unraveled inside this place. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but stopping was not an option. Every time I dared to glance back, They were there, the crooked folk, moving soundlessly through the trees, their faces stretching into awful, inhuman grins, their bodies bending in ways that bones should never allow. At some point, I tripped. My body slammed hard against the dirt, and for a moment, I could not move. The air had been knocked from my lungs. My vision swam. When I looked up, I saw it. A tree, massive and ancient, its bark split open like a gaping mouth, and inside it, barely visible in the dim light, was Ricky, or what was left of him. His face was stretched, his eyes wide and empty, his mouth frozen in a silent scream. The tree had swallowed him whole, his fingers still reaching outward, his body fused with the bark like he had been growing there for centuries. That was when I heard my name, not whispered, spoken, directly into my ear, a voice that sounded like my own, but wrong, hollow, echoing from somewhere deep beneath the earth. I turned, and they were there, close now, too close. The nearest one reached out, its fingers impossibly long, its grin stretching wider, splitting its skin like old leather. I did the only thing I could. I shut my eyes. I do not know how long I stood there, shaking, waiting to feel those hands wrap around my throat, waiting to be dragged into the trees, into the roots, into whatever nightmare had claimed this place long before we had disturbed it. But when I opened my eyes again, I was alone. The trees were still. The air was empty. The road, the trucks, the worksite gone. There was only the forest, stretching endlessly in every direction, untouched, like we had never been there at all. They let me go. Or maybe they never took me at all. Maybe I never even existed in the first place. The rescue teams found me 3 days later, wandering a dirt road miles from the worksite, covered in scratches, my clothes torn, my mind shattered. They asked me what happened, where the others had gone. I told them the truth. They did not believe me, said it was shock, said I must have gotten lost in the woods and imagined the rest. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. The highway project was abandoned. No one else went missing, because no one else ever tried to build there again. The forest took back what belonged to it. The crooked folk do not like it when you fix what ain't broken, and some things were never meant to be touched.